Well, I'm here with Pastor Royal, and he's a longtime friend, and I met him in Dallas many years ago. But let's get started by if you can share a little bit about your story, Royal, kind of where you come from and the journey that it was to come here to the United States.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Hi, Matt, and thank you so much for allowing me to share my story. I'm former refugee from Bhutan. I came to Nepal when I was 3 months and stayed in refugee camp for um, almost 20 years, 19 years, and came to Dallas, Texas, and lived there for 10 years, around 11 years. And I recently moved to Pennsylvania, Harrisburg, to plant a church here. And Matt here is I have to say, he's my first American friend. When I moved to Dallas, he was my first friend to speak in English. I still remember that day. Yeah, I'm from Nepali background. I speak Nepali, Hindi, and I'm learning English. Yeah.
All right, awesome. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about when you first arrived in the US. And I think you knew some English a little bit already, but then you learned here as well. So tell me what it was like when you first got here, and what was it like in terms of speaking English and learning English?
Yeah, speaking English here in America is, this is one of the fundamental here. You can't do anything without speaking the language that, people understand you here. And when I came here first time, yeah, I went to English school in Nepal, but in refugee camp, but never had a chance of speaking in with American, because they speak a little bit different than us. Like I think our school was English school, like English from Britain English, and we coming from that background and not getting to speak English frequently in home, that was a little bit challenge for us to, speak with American and yeah, I pretty much learned to speak. It was a bit challenging, but getting the friends with, um, getting along with some of friends like you had really helped me to improve my English, understanding the vocabularies and their phrases. That really helped me. I still remember the first time I had conversation with you that night when you were in my sister's house, and I talked very few words sentences with you. I had a chance of um, exchanging few words, but I felt like I did so great job today. That night was kind of like it boosted my confidence that I could speak English. But
Let's back up a little bit. You mentioned that you were 3 months old when you moved to the refugee camp in Nepal, and you spent almost 20 years there. Did a lot of Bhutanese refugees live there in that refugee camp for 20 years or for that same amount of time? Is that common?
Yeah, that is common. We actually we long histories. We have centuries of histories that our people from Nepal, they went to Bhutan, and from Bhutan, the Bhutanese government thought that we were not exactly Bhutanese, and not just our family, but whole southern Bhutanese was, so many, the thousands of people were refugees because of politics, because of religious differences, and so many other status. But yeah, that was common that. I think thousands of people, 40, 50,000 were in the refugee camp in eastern Nepal. We had no way of knowing that we would be America one day. That was not in our, mind.
Mhm.
We thought we would be staying in the camp for forever.
If I remember, in Bhutan, they speak, or the majority people there in Bhutan speak Dzongkha, a different
Yeah.
language, but the culturally Nepali people who lived there in the south, they spoke Nepali. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
So I mean, you weren't in school in Bhutan, but people who lived in Bhutan and were a bit older, were they forced to learn a different language, or what was that like? Tell me more about the language in Bhutan.
Yeah. I heard the stories that Bhutanese government they forced them to learn Dzongkha. You know, it's the national language, and they burn Nepali books, Nepali literature, Nepali dress. You know, those kind of stuff to make everyone learn their culture and their language and their everything, even the religion. The Bhutanese had Buddhist religion, and Nepali are mostly the Hindu. So they were technically forcing Buddhism and their all tradition on the Nepalese, and it was yeah it was kind of like to my knowing it was them forcing us to learn Dzongkha language. You know, we were not allowed to speak Nepali. You
Mm.
know, they were kind of erasing that the language literature from the country, so they can they can attack our culture. You know, but that's the strategy our elders would tell us that they wanted to destroy the language first.
You moved to Nepal in the refugee camp. What did the Nepalese people around you think, or how did you interact with because you I don't know if you maybe never had Nepalese citizenship, but there were Nepalese people there and you spoke the
Yeah.
same language, but you were kind of separated from that. So talk to me about that.
Yeah, and also coming to the refugee camp was already, you know, that having having to leave everything, land, properties, citizenship from the Bhutan was already a pain. But you know, coming to the place that they understand our language, culture, it was all almost everything was similar. We lived in Bhutan, but you know, had to come to the Nepal. But still, the those people, the locals of Nepal, they thought that we were outsider because we came from Bhutan, and when they saw us, they had some kind of the way of seeing us, which we I growing up I felt it was discriminatory view that we were there to take their jobs, like I already said, like we were around 40,000 people that time, like in the early first few years, and we rapidly grew in the camp, and it was the I think the locals in Nepal had fear that we would take their lands, opportunities, benefits, and those stuff, and they would put us down. Those kind of stuff would happen. Yeah,
Mhm.
I kind of feel like there was some kind of segregation between Bhutanese Nepalese and Nepalese. Yeah,
Mhm.
even when I had to go to the college after I was done with my uh, school in refugee camp, we had to go outside in the locals college, and we had to hide our identity. Like we
Wow.
we had to tell. I mean, we don't have to hide, but they forced us to hide it, because it will be very simple for us to say I'm Bhutanese refugees. They would treat us very differently.
So you were able to leave the refugee camp though and go to college. Were people able to leave the refugee camp in Nepal and find jobs?
Technically, we are not allowed to go outside the refugee camp, because that's the one of the contracts we I mean, UNHCR would see us or feed us, give us benefit basis of that, that qualification. We have to be inside the refugee camp. But a lot of our fathers and mothers used to go outside refugee camp to get jobs to feed us. because we would need some, extra money to survive there. Yeah, it was illegal for us to go outside, but still our parents would work in the low wage labors, and just to get some, vegetables, they would work for 8 hours, whole day in their local fields. Those kind of things would happen in the camp. Yeah.
So tell me more about then you came to the US when you were about 20. How old were you?
19.
19. Okay. And learned some English here. What were some of the challenges, especially as you first came here? What were some of the challenges you faced? You already talked some about language, but what else? What are other challenges you faced?
Understanding the legal procedures like law of this country, and even I would say food was really different here.
Mhm.
Learning to cope with different different food. These burgers, pizzas were only in the pictures in the refugee camps, in the magazines, and
Yeah.
getting to eat those, it's and the taste we've been raised in the refugee camp was slightly different. We would still long that food from refugee camp, and even though burgers and pizzas are better, yeah, but those, I mean, the law, I would still remember, processing with this green card processes and citizenship process, and those all these paperworks are really hard for us. Coming, I can still remember, reading a lot of mails of our Bhutanese people. Those were one of my ministries when initially when I came to America. I have to read all those letter for not only for me but for all other people in the communities. Yeah, those were the challenges.
Tell me more about the college and on to the degrees that you've earned.
I actually started from Richland, and I did all my ESLs and those stuff, and I went to I did my Bible schools, colleges all the way here. I went to Rhema Bible College in 2015, and I graduated from there and went to Asbury Theological Seminaries for my master's, and I graduated this year, and I'm in school for my DMin, Doctor of Ministries, right now. This is my first class I'm taking for my doctoral ministry. But yeah, those were the first few, steps that really helped me, going to ESL at Richland College and getting to know those professors and teachers are already, they already have that sense that, we as a foreigner, they already have hard time speaking English, and those stuff were really helpful. Yeah, they had those things back in their mind that, these guys needs extra grace, and to understand what we are saying, and they would simplify everything they are saying, and those phrases that we never heard, they would just simplify those really helped me understanding a lot of those sentences and the thoughts they were, communicating with us. I would not really be afraid of making mistake and asking the question that I would be ashamed,
I think that definitely attests to how successful you've been is because you haven't been afraid to ask. Even when you're saying when you started out, when we first met and we first started talking, you were courageous to talk with me. And,
Yeah.
a lot of students are afraid of making a mistake, and you might have been afraid also, but you still did it. You still tried, and that you were able to be successful. So I'm encouraged by that. First, let me ask this. Talk to me a little bit about like your identity, because someone might call you Bhutanese, someone might say you're Nepalese because you speak the language and you kind of lived there as well. You're an American citizen,
Mm-hmm.
and you're a refugee. What are the identities that you resonate with, that you would call yourself?
Yeah, it's so I mean confusing to even identify myself. I had this identity issues growing up. Everybody would ask, where you from, and I my mind would take me to I'm Bhutanese, but all of my the culture and even the language I speak is from Nepal, and now and I my first citizenship is from America. So I would kind of say Bhutanese American,
Mhm.
Bhutanese American. I would say even though I was um, I don't know. I feel kind of like connected to Bhutan more because even though I was refugee in Nepal for 20 years, I felt like that's where I born and I got citizenship in America, so Bhutanese American.
Yeah, I think that's great. Thanks for sharing. I think it's something that many refugees process through is yeah, the question of identity. What about like that identity of refugee? Like, does that is that something that you would call yourself, or does that change because you've been in the United States for so long? Is that something you always say you are a refugee, or is that something you're no longer a refugee? Now you're an American citizen.
So I always, identified myself as a refugee, former refugees, and even though I'm now, American, I, I would love to identify myself as former refugee. I would not mind, but some would, I don't know, but I have not heard anybody, hiding their identity because we are proud that we were once refugee and get to come in America.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, and it's interesting that when you lived in Nepal in the refugee camps, people outside of the refugee camp that were Nepalese, there was that struggle of like when you were studying in college in Nepal,
Yeah,
you kind of had to hide that identity, but now
yeah,
you're able to wear that identity with
yeah.
honor.
Most of the people I met in my life, they really enjoy listening my stories and I mean, celebrate who I am. They are not judgmental of my past and how I came through. That I mean, that really, um, that was. I mean, people would celebrate who I am. So I'm really thankful for that. Also, American. A lot of people may have that idea that you know the American they would not like refugees or immigrants, but 90% I would say the people I met they have loved me because of who I am.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. Is there anything else that you'd like to share? Any advice or encouragement or thought for, especially for ESL teachers? Because I think most of the people in this room would be ESL teachers.
I'm very thankful that people like you guys, in the room have empowered refugee to be, their best. And thank you so much for doing that. And always, this is not, I'm not saying as an advice, but it's just a friendly reminder. Always be mindful that these people that you guys are serving, they have been through a lot in their life, and sometimes their past, their experience would not let them learn so quick. Some would be fast learner, but majority of them they would struggle learning and those stuff because of trauma, because of those hurt from the past. But anyway, be more gracious to those people, and which I believe you guys already doing. That's the reason why you guys are in refugees this class, or this room. And I'm very thankful. Just be mindful that we refugees need little bit extra grace in that area of learning. Yeah, thank you so much, Matt. That's all.